So we're going to do part 1 of section 6, which is absolute value. And really, to get absolute value with inequalities, we need to understand absolute value with equalities. So today is the equality day. So absolute value, part 1, we'll do equalities, and tomorrow we'll do inequalities. Okay, so as we start this section, let's recall what absolute value means. If I do the absolute value of -6, I will get, and if I do the absolute value of 6, I get 6. So let's just use that to connect to this idea. If I say the absolute value of x is 6, well then how many possibilities are there?
1.
You sure?
No, there's 2.
Yeah, there's 2. 2 possibilities. Well, what are those possibilities? Well, x could be -6, right? Or x could be +6. So what did we do? We split this into 2 cases. X could be the negative version of that, or it could be the positive version of that. And the reason is because of the number line. Absolute value is distance from 0. Alright, so here's 0, and here's 6, and here's -6. See, this would be a distance of 6, and this is also a distance of 6, so x could be either one of those. So our trick that we're going to need to remember for solving these is actually remembering that we get 2 answers. Now, after I show this example, sometimes what happens is we assume that we can get one answer and just change its sign and that's the other answer, and that's not the case, and that's what we're going to see here as we do several of these. Make sure, just as you're writing, next chapter you're going to need lots of graph paper, like an enormous amount of graph paper. So go to Walmart while it's on sale, get 100 million packs of it, and then that should be almost get you through the year. All right.
Like, we're going to need tons of graph paper for the whole year, or?
Well, if you're buying it, you might as well, right? Okay. So let's do a few simple examples. So if I did absolute value of 2x equals 8. I have 2 possibilities, right? The 2x could be -8, or the 2x could be +8 because of the reasons that we just talked about. And now I solve both of these. And how do I solve the first one? Divide by 2. And the second one, I do the same thing. And then you might be even more convinced, but Mr. Kane, I could have just taken that -4 and switched its sign and gotten a +4. Well, here's the gotcha. What if I added 2 instead of multiplied? So we'll do this one. You don't ever want to assume that whenever you have 2 multiple cases that you can just switch the sign of one of them and get the other one and save yourself work. You don't want to do that because that's not true. So we set this up. How many possibilities do we have? All this stuff on the inside could be -8. And notice how I'm always putting the negative on the left-hand side. I mean, you don't have to do that, but when we do the stuff that we're doing tomorrow, you're going to want to do that so you don't get confused. Or +8. So we see we have a negative case and a positive case. We need to account for both of them. So how do we solve this first one? subtract 2. And we subtract 2 on this one. And those are our 2 answers. Now, notice I'm not checking these answers. You'll want to check them, but for the most part, with absolute value, if I just have a number here on the right, it's going to work. It's when we have an x over here that we're going to want to be very weary. Weary. You came into class weary. What's your question, Veronica? Oh, I thought you were asking me something. Okay, let's say I have now 3x plus 5 minus a 2 equals a 10. Why not? This is going to be important. First, isolate the absolute value. First, we have to isolate that absolute value piece. So I need to get this piece by itself. So I'm going to add the 2 to both sides first. We get 12. And now I split it into 2 pieces. 3x plus 5 equals what? Negative 12. Or 3x plus 5 could equal positive 12. And then we solve this by subtracting 5, divide by 3. And over here, by subtracting 5. And dividing by 3. I just did that all because why not? Notice very different answers, right? Okay, I couldn't just change the sign on one of them and get it right. I had to actually work it out. Any questions on the easy ones? I mean, this is the easy type. Any questions before I go on to the tricky type? They're all tricky. Yeah, kind of. That's why we're taking 2 days on it. You ready for the tricky type? All right, here comes the first big kahuna. This one's right out of your book. All right, so notice I do have an absolute value. Is it alone? Is it isolated? Yep, okay, so I can go to the next step. What's the next step?
Break down to 2 possibilities.
2 possibilities, the negative possibility and the positive possibility. So, I change all the signs on this for the negative possibility. And for the positive possibility, I keep all the signs. Do you see what I did there?
Why don't you change it on the positive?
Because it's the negative possibility, so that would be negative, all the stuff on that side. And the negative would distribute to all of those and give me that. Now, we'll do it on one, I guess. Okay. So now I solve both of those. How do I solve this one on the left? Add 4x. And then we subtract the 2. And finally divide by 7. So that's one possibility. What will I do on this one? Yep. That'll be the faster way. And subtract the 5. And boy, do we want to be done. But we will get it wrong if we leave it like this. whenever we have x's out here, outside of the absolute value on the other side, we need to check. Well, how do I check? We need to remember, like, go back to the beginning. Absolute value negative 6 was what? 6, and absolute value 6 is 6. What do I always get with absolute value? Well, I don't always get a 6, but I always get a positive, right? It should give me a positive. Okay, so I need to check these. When I have an x out here, I want to check them. And I don't need to check to make sure that I get an exact number. I just need to check to make sure I don't get a negative. So if I put a negative 1 up here, so that's 4 times negative 1 plus 5, negative 4 plus 5, 1, that's fine. Check this negative 3. All right, so 4 times negative 3 plus 5, negative 12 plus 5 is negative 7. No. So we reject that answer because it does not work. It leads to a negative on the outside of the absolute value. And we can't have that. It's so tempting to just be praised. All that's good and holy. I'm done. And then we get it wrong. And all our work was correct. We did everything right. We just need to check to make sure that we don't. We call that, and the book is going to use this, and I want you to get used to math terms. That's called an extraneous answer. So if the book says find the extraneous answers, that's what it means. Find the ones that are answers but not really. All right, let's do one more tricky one just because, we can. Actually, let's just do 3, and then I'll show you, well, yeah. Let's do these 3. All right, so start on this first one, and I'm going to Mr. Kane version of slow do it. You try to stay ahead of me.
Do we need it in our notes or?
Do it in your notes. Any questions on the first one? Okay, I'm moving on to the second one in that case. So did you finish your design, Caroline, for your tower?
Yes.
It was not fun?
I'm trying to figure out one that would be tall and hold a composition relative.
Oh,
And it's still not taller than anything else, but
Does his tallest one hold the book?
he said it does. He said it was 33 inches, about that.
Any questions on the second one? All right.
Yes.
Yes. There's a question. Yay, question. When I split -16, then I subtract the 8. -16 minus 8 should be -24. Then divide by 2 and I get -12. All right, let's walk through number 3 together. I don't know how far you got. What should we do? Is the absolute value isolated? Yes. So what do we do next, Caroline?
Two separate equations.
Okay. What will be on the left of the first one, or the right-hand side of the first one?
-4x minus 8.
And the other one?
4x minus
Yeah, we just switched the signs on that.
8. Wait, so with number 1, are you supposed to take off the negative sign? The negative 6x?
Oh, I'm a bonobo.
It still gets you the same answer.
It gets you the
just
same
split.
answer, but it's just by a fluke of nature. So this one should have been the negative answer. That one should have been the positive one. Good job catching that. Yeah, I should not have dropped that negative. It didn't make a difference ultimately in that case, but the other questions it would make a difference. So, yeah, thank you. All right, so we add the 4x, and we'll add the 2. Divide by 5, check my work, is that good? Get really weird answers here. Whenever you get weird answers, are you ever like, I don't know? All right, so that's what I get anyway. I don't know if that's right. I don't have the answer in front of me, but I subtracted 4x. And 1x minus 4 is -3. And then I added a 2. Got 10. Does that make sense? Now, I do need to check these because I do have this x right here, and this is about -1, right? It's close to -1. So if I put that in, no problems. This is about -3. It's close to -3. So if I put in -3 here, I get -12 plus 8, and that gives me a negative. So I have to reject that answer. And don't assume just because you have negatives that you reject them, and don't assume that because there's an x out here that you have to reject something. You do need to check though to make sure. So we reject that answer. That one does not work. Only this one. All right. I am going to give you the last thing that I want to talk about today before we get into some review work, and that's this case. Well, there's 2 of them, and it doesn't really matter what I put here. Sometimes we get so used to doing a certain set of, I'll call it an algorithm, that we just always do it without really thinking about what's going on here. Absolute value always gives a positive. So right at the beginning of this problem, I see, wait a minute, this is a negative. Not possible. Now, if you have a sharp eye and you catch that, then this one you're very thankful for having, because all you have to write is no solution, or null, or whatever you want to write. No solution. This does not work. And then you have no work to do. Done. Nothing. So any version of that would, now your book might be more tricky about that, right? They might say something like this, give you something really complicated. right? They might give you something like that. And then in the process of solving, you're like, okay, I subtract that 8 because I have to isolate my absolute value. And then I get to this step, we're needing to recognize, wait, absolute value cannot yield a negative. So I just write at that step, no solution. No solution.
But on the other side, could you have like negative 4x plus 8 and still solve it? Absolute value on the other side.
Like this?
Or
And
the other way, but yeah.
That doesn't matter which side, so something in there.
Yeah.
Now I need to solve it because I have an x right there. And I don't know what that x is. And that's why ultimately I do end up rejecting an answer of some sort because I can't have a negative here. So I would solve this, yes. It would work. It's when I have a whole number or something like that, negative, where there's no x on it. If there were an x here, just if I had this, I need to actually solve it now. Because now there's an x there and I don't know. A negative value for that x would make this work. Okay, so we'll stop right there, and now we'll go over questions.